research. But instead of asking you to do this as a research, I will be giving it to you already because I want you to focus on something else. Okay, so we have two laws that sort of um, are used as guidelines in designing subdivision or housing projects. One is called the BP 220 for socialized housing, and there they normally cover what we see here as the socialized housing and economic housing. And then there's also the PD 957, which deals with subdivisions and condominiums. So they would cover medium cost housing and open market housing. Now, I think if you notice, there's a term medium cost housing, and then in the guidelines, in the architectural brief that I just presented in the plenary, I mentioned it's an open market. So, but then what happened was that at the last minute, Architect Presas gave the title of the plate as medium end subdivision. So I wasn't able to change that anymore. So I think right now they are arguing in the other class. But let me see. I actually would like to stand on the open market housing. So there's no limit, at least in terms of budget this time. So in the plate number one, for example, I was trying to be a bit like Kuripot, no? Unlike the class of architect Tabasuarez, because there were some students who consulted me on their designs, and then the other architect Tabasuarez, and I realized that they were given free reign, on the design and to have all the spaces as luxurious as possible. But it's now my time. It's our time to do something like that, because how we can make things luxurious despite the fact that there are a lot of restrictions like percentages of saleable and unsaleable, and some percentages of the different types of housing. Anyway, so for horizontal and vertical development, you see here how much a house should cost, to fall under each of the category. So ours is horizontal development, that's subdivision. Vertical development would be your condominium. So we're talking about houses built at the cost of more than 4 million. Okay, 4 million. So, and then there's the basis for these selling prices. So that we should concern ourselves with that. Um, so the sites will have to be, there's no problem here because the site is given to you. But when it comes to saleable and non-saleable, so there are percentages here depending on how many dwellings, um, how many lots or dwelling units per hectare. So our lot is only 1 hectare, and then um, you can already get the, ano, uh, you can actually compute already how many would probably be the number of lots, and then you can now allocate the parks and playgrounds here. So this percentage is part of the 30%, although this is 3.5% of the whole property, but then they're counted under the 30% of open space of the non-saleable. So our plate will be concerned about this one on the right, about medium cost and open market housing. For non-saleable, so when we talk about what's this? Allocation for community facility. So it says mandatory provision of areas for community facilities such as neighborhood multipurpose center for housing projects with 1 hectare and above. So we're still in this because we have 1.7 hectares, no, 1.07. These areas are non-saleable. However, the developer may provide areas for community facilities such as school and commercial centers in excess of the mandatory requirement set forth in this rule, which shall be deemed saleable. The use of the said area shall be indicated in the plan and annotated in the title thereto. Especially if you have a very, very big land. So um, even your non-saleable area of 30% can be also quite big. So you can still assign some schools there uh, if it's not saleable. But even then, even the saleable portion, it's still too big, no? Because probably the real estate developer um, thinks that only a certain number of houses can be sold. And then actually, if you put in other facilities like a school or a shopping center or grocery or something else, that actually raises the prices of the houses and also draw in uh, more people, no? More buyers. So they are willing to sacrifice some of the saleable spaces for housing into commercial. So they have that mix. Okay. Now, in your plate, that is not required. Uh, but if you want to put that in, the ratio of each type of housing unit, um, the duplex, the row house, and the um, whatever that the single attached should be still the same. Okay. So nanggamay ang number but ang ratio is still the same, still 40-30-30. So the disadvantage lang of adding more like grocery, for example, is that you'll have more structures to draw. Okay. Um, so the type of roads circulation system, I think we will also go back to this later on. So there are three types: major, collector, and minor. And then if the area is 2.5 hectares and below, so these are we only have major and minor. So this is applicable to our plate. 10 here is meters, 10 meters and 8 meters. This is the road right of way. Okay, so from one property to the next property. So that that portion where there is a road. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the whole of 10 meters is the road. Part of it is sidewalk, part of it is even sometimes planters, and the rest are the carriageway, which we will talk about here. No? The road right of way, for example, here for motor courts, if you have a motor court, is 6 meters, 6 meters, but the carriageway is only 5. Therefore, the half meter on both sides are sidewalks. If you have an alley, so you only have 2 meters, but then actually they still allow some, I think, motorists on the carriageway. So there's a carriageway, it's the same, no? And then this is like a passwalk already, the alley. And then here are the minimum lot area for each. That's why I told you that you can actually compute. So, for example, the 1 hectare or 10,700 square meters, you get the 70% of that, and then you get these areas here, and then you try to compute what can be 40%, 30%, and this. So, makakuha mo certain number. Okay. So for open market, so we will be using the 120 square meter for single detached, 96 square meter for single attached or duplex. Now, if if the two properties are the two adjoining properties have their houses attached together, okay, so that's duplex, okay. But if the adjoining properties have their um, houses attached only on one side. So for this one, naka-attach sa sa right side. This one is also attached to the right side. So that's a single attached. Okay. So kung ibalinin mo siya and then it's attached to the other house, so that makes it a duplex. Now, a row house is only 60 square meters. No? Is attached on both sides of the property. Okay. And then marag sa gunso na siya. So that's why it's called a row house. And then for the front, okay, the minimum frontage should be, well, it depends on what type of lot. No, if it's in a corner or it's regular, only one side is open to a road, and then it's a regular. So well, it's not rectangular, and it's interior. There, you need a special road to reach your own property, so that motor court. Okay, so the the frontage differs. Okay. So if you notice, the row house is only 4 meters, and then duplex 8 meters. The regular lot is 10 meters. So the maximum length of one block, because you will be grouping the houses into a single block, so a maximum length should be 400 meters. No, and then if a block exceeds 250 meters, there should be an alley in the middle of the block, which is the 2-meter alley. Okay, so therefore, if it's a 400-meter block, so there's already a 2-meter alley in the middle. But if it is less than 250, like you have only 245-meter block, so we don't need an alley. I think this is the same as the last time. Um, I'm looking for the anyway. I was looking for the definition of the motor court, but it's not here. So interior subdivision project must secure right of way to the nearest public road, and the right of way shall be designated as interconnecting road. So this does not apply to us. Um, but just in case in your planning, uh, actually, I'm also going to present this in my planning. No? So some of you will also hear about this again if you're also under me in planning. So they'll be required to donate this road that connects the subdivisions to the government. So once donated, it becomes a public road, and the government will take care of maintaining it and developing it. Okay. Okay, so on the main public road, especially because you are going to design also the gate of the subdivision, so you have to allow this, no, a shoulder for the jeeps or for cars to um, well, for drop off. Um, okay, what is this? Subdivision projects have a provision for future expansion, so it does not apply to us. Hierarchy of roads, 2.5 hectares and below. Um, it's major, minor, motor court, and alley. We already tackled that earlier. And I think mali ni siya, no? I mean, project sizes should be up here. So I'm going to correct that before I share this with you. And then the planting strips and sidewalks. Okay, so I mentioned to you that RROW means road right of way. Okay, so that includes planting strips, sidewalks, and then the carriage way. Okay, so planting strips for open market housing, so 1.3 meter worth. So you have to divide that into two. So that means 0.65 meter on one side and 0.65 meter on the other side. Then the sidewalk is 1.2 meters, so you have to divide that into two also. zero point 0.6 on the one side, 0.6 on the other side. But we're talking about 15-meter road right way. No? But earlier, we mentioned that the road right of way that we need is only the major is what? 2.5 below is 10 ang major and 8 ang minor. So therefore, going back to this, so ang 10, so a total of 0.8 lang ang imuhang planters and 1.2 yapon imuhang sidewalk. And then the type of pavement, the treatment, it's concrete or asphalt. So there are other requirements here, but we will skip that because they are, just read through it. I will share my slides with you. But there has to be electrical power supply, water power supply, drainage system also, but you're not asked to do that. Septic tank connection, garbage disposal system. Um, okay, so this is one requirement that probably I should give to you because earlier in the plenary we mentioned that you will have to think through based on the experience in your previous projects what the requirements are for each house. Okay, you mentioned okay there should be the kitchen, the bedrooms, the toilet, and how many toilets. So you have to figure that out, and the living room. But in addition, there should be a uh, garbage bin. Okay. Okay. So in terms of the shelter component, so these are the minimum areas of the houses. 42 square meters for all. Duplex, these are minimum, okay? So if the lot is bigger, so you can go bigger. Um, we also have here this is the drawings here that you see is the row house. So the row house is attached to the houses beside it on both sides, okay? And so you have a firewall, and that firewall, there's actually a rule on how much it should extend outside the wall, so 30 cm in front and at the back and also on top above the roof, okay? So please don't forget about that firewall. And then, well, this is not essential in the design. Setbacks and easements are important. So it says here that we shall conform to the provisions of the National Building Code of the Philippines. So it does not fit here, so it's in the next page, which is this one. So here, there are terms like R1, R2, R3, R4, and then R5. So what are these? Because we have to know because uh, depending on that, we have to follow the front, side, and rear requirements. Then there's a lot of notes here. Okay. So R1, a low density residential zone characterized mainly by single family, single detached dwellings with the usual community ancillary uses on a neighborhood scale, such as executive subdivisions and relatively exclusive residential communities which are not subdivisions. So all our housing units belong to R1. Therefore, we subscribe to this um, standard. So in front is 4.5 meters, towards the sides, on both sides is 2 meters, and then 2 meters at the back. Okay. The rest, you can just read on this later. Our our first plate, I think, was on R4, a medium to high density residential use or occupancy. Okay. Now, this I mentioned about the different types of lots earlier. So you have the corner lot. This is a corner through lot. This is unusual. So this, it's very rare also because normally you put another lot beside another. So you don't do it this way, no? So it's seldom. This is a very rare configuration. And lot, if it's at the end, of course. And then through lot, if it's there's a street on both the front and then the rear. Um, This is a poor definition of an inside lot because this could be an inside lot if there's no street here at the back, okay, and then there's a street here at the front, and you need to get an easement. Okay, you have to buy a part of the property of the one in front of you so that you have access to your property because you are inside. And then there's our green belts and then the street. So there's a lot of this. I actually got this in Facebook. So every time I encountered these things being posted, so I save them and then so that I don't have to draw them myself. No? Um, if you read National Building Code, you will find there a lot of terms like AMBF, so allowable maximum building footprint. So basically, it's this. No, there's a setback here. In our case, it's 2 meters like that, and then the frontage is at least 10 meters, or depending on the lot, it's 14 meters. I think if it is a corner lot, and then the setback and front is 4.5 meters. So, and then depending on the type of lot, so these are the setbacks. So just go through them on your own. Okay. In terms of economic housing, we're not going to talk about that. I will more, discuss this more in my planning class. No? But just to show you that, okay, this is how a row house would look like. This is how a duplex would look like, except that your plate requires a two-story structure. So just imagine a two-story structure with this type of configuration. This one in two-story also. Okay, socialized housing is even a smaller type. No? So it's this. Okay, so there's still the residential zone. These are, you might need this. You might need to know also because, for example, you put the setbacks, but then you need to put the garage or the carport. Okay, so the carport can take up the setback. Okay, and then you can also put a wall here. So that's allowed, but there are limits. Okay, so these are the limits here. Um, or you can also, this is a single attached, okay? So there's no another house attached to this. So this could also be used um, for single detached. No, this is normally for row houses, okay? Because there are some, um, well, even for single detached house, the owner might want to really use up the space. So they're allowed to use the both setbacks at the side as long as they put a firewall. Okay, so that's allowed. So even if it's not supposedly a row house, so I guess this becomes something like a townhouse. No? It's like a high-end row house. But anyway, in that case, if you go beyond your setback, you're required to put up a firewall. Okay, so this is for R3. It does not apply to us for R5. And then there are even development controls. Okay, but for this one, I will not discuss it here because you can easily study it. I want you to be the one really to figure this out. So I'm already giving you a lot. Um, but this one has to do with the maximum bulk. How high can you be? Can you put your building? So there's a maximum height for the building. Okay, um, and that's normally something like 10 meters. I think it's somewhere here. Okay, just look for it. So you can still go as high as 3 floors, unless, well, here's the meter above the highest grade. So uh, for as long as you don't go beyond 10 meters. Okay, so which means if it's like this, so your roof will have to be flat. Otherwise, you have a two floors. You can have a loft or an attic. Okay, and this is how to determine the topmost uh, part. No, it's when the roof is a gable, something like this. So it's not really the top of the ridge, no? But then halfway between the like the top of the beam to the top of the ridge. Well, if you are in a city, this might be in a very important consideration that in the middle of the road, you have to sort of project an angle. In this case, I think for R1, it's say if it's 38 degrees, so your structure should not go beyond this angle or line of angular plane. Okay, so there's that restriction also. Okay, that's it. Now I want to announce that only three of you have submitted the final plate, the plate number one. So, what's the plan of the others? No? When are you planning to submit? So, I will not put you on the spot by interviewing you here. But I just want you to know that for the plate number two, the deadlines will be strictly followed. Okay, so I was very lenient with the deadlines in the first plate, but in the second plate, so it has to be strictly followed because there's actually so much to do. Okay, site planning alone is a bit troublesome. Um, okay, so I just got a message from one of the teachers who said that the schematics um, she's making it A3. Um, so, do you have any questions so far? Any questions? So, please submit na mo sa inyo ang plate number one. Kung wala pa mo niagi sa laing steps like naapay wala ka submit until now og schematics, I think there is some of you, no? Just go directly to final submission. Just keep those. Before mag-pile up ang requirements, okay? Um, so after this, I'm going to post an assignment which is due for tomorrow, okay? I will not be requiring the research na kuan like last time. Instead, I'm going to break that up into smaller assignments. So I'm going to post it in Canvas, but the assignment is simply to identify what you think are the design issues which are important to consider in this plate. Okay, kana lang. So you'll have to type that in, and it's due tomorrow because the I will need the your answers for the discussion on Wednesday. So we will meet on Wednesday, okay, at 2:30. So those are my announcements so far. So, wala na yung pangutana, no? I can turn off the recording.